I'm only interested in what's real, what exists in the world today, what's actually changing the world right now. I'm not interested in hype. And a lot of what the media covers is hype.
Hey, hey, hey. Welcome to another episode of Scroll Halters with your host, Mitt, a show where entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers share their best stories and insights. Today I'm joined by Josh Dorfman, CEO of Supercool and a co-founder of Planted, formerly known as the Lazy Environmentalist. Hi, Josh. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Can you tell my listeners more about Supercool and Planted, and before that, some of the work you did with the Lazy Environmentalist?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll take that in reverse because it probably makes the most sense. Years ago, a couple decades ago, I got very interested in sustainability. I'd spent going back a little further, a couple of years in China after university, thinking about a career in maybe the foreign service, maybe being a diplomat, maybe working for the CIA. I just thought, man, if I go to China, cool things will happen. I was teaching English on a university, and I ended up working for a company that made bicycle locks, an American company. So cool things did happen, just not like CIA or, like foreign service. And while I was there, I started to realize that here was a country where 1 billion people at the time were riding bicycles, but clearly they were building the infrastructure for everyone to buy and drive cars. You could see that being built, highways, tunnels, bridges, so fast. And not being an environmentalist, not thinking about climate change, these weren't my issues, but I started realizing like, whoa, there's gonna be 1 billion people driving cars here one day. What is that going to mean for the planet, economic development, international relations? And eventually that led me to start thinking about sustainability. And so a couple of decades ago, I did start a media company called The Lazy Environmentalist, which was based on my personal less than great, less than awesome environmental practices. I took long showers. I wasn't the best at recycling. I was kind of falling down. I wasn't living my values. And so I wrote a blog called The Lazy Environmentalist about myself, saying I would love a low flow shower head that would help reduce my impact so I can take really long showers. I would love an Audi TT convertible if that could be electric or biodiesel or hydrogen or some technology. I don't really care about the technology, but if it could be green and fit what I want and I could afford it, I would make that choice. I just need this to be really convenient so I can live my values. I'm not proud of that. It's just a reality. I am a lazy environmentalist, and that struck a chord, it hit a nerve where I was in Brooklyn at the time, and one break led to another, and I found myself with a TV show on Sundance Channel, reality TV show, helping lazy Americans go green, and a daily radio show on Sirius Satellite Radio here in North America, doing the same. And it was a really great run. So I was very focused on consumers and helping people live more sustainably. To kind of just fast forward to some of the other things you mentioned, in 2021, so going back now about 4.5 years ago, the beginning of 2021, I started working with two engineers from SpaceX. This was in North Carolina. We came up with an idea to grow some biomass. Eventually, we found what we wanted to grow. We thought it might be hemp. We weren't exactly sure what it would be, but some biomass that grew much faster than trees. So we could pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere much faster than trees can. They take a long time to grow. And we started thinking like if we could do that and we could build a factory that was all electric, no smokestack, so that we didn't just suddenly then give all that carbon back into the atmosphere, we could probably replace trees in homes in America with a better product that builders would like that just fit how they build. That business is called Planted. That actually is what we do. We make what we call carbon negative building materials because those materials sequester carbon from the atmosphere. And today we're working with the largest builder in America on a 10 million panel order, which is about 90,000 homes, to continue to take that business to scale. I stepped down as CEO in 2024 and came back to my media roots because I looked around after being so focused on building materials. I picked my head up and started doing some research. And what occurred to me was we are no longer living in this moment of can we solve climate change? Will we solve climate change? Are there enough solutions? What should we do? We're actually living in this moment of adoption of a lot of solutions that are here, like planted, that are commercially viable and now actually scaling, have real traction in the market, but they're not well known. They're not commonly reported on in the media. And I felt there was an opportunity to build a new media company that tells those stories, but more than telling the stories, case studies what is driving that scale, what is driving that adoption, whether it's a new technology that's built on AI that cuts, heating and air conditioning and ventilation costs for buildings and cuts costs, cuts energy, makes it very easy to deploy, a company called Brainbox, or whether it's a company called Zoom, ZUM, that is now in over 4,000 schools across America that takes over the student bus transportation system, brings AI to it to make it much more efficient in terms of bus routes, so kids get to school on time. You actually
Yeah.
use less diesel gas, and then you can electrify the school bus system because you actually don't need as big a fleet. And so these solutions are here. We cover them, and our theory of change is the more that we can show business people what exists today, what is scaling, what is de-risked, and viable and doable, the more those solutions can get adopted and we can move toward a low carbon future.
Okay. And yeah, you mentioned a company using AI just to help solve the climate crisis. What do you think about that? Because AI itself is it consumes a lot of resources, but at the same time, you have a lot of these companies like the one you mentioned that are working towards making, uh, to improving, uh, to burning fewer fossil fuels and improving the environment. And yeah. What do you think about that?
I think that we spend a lot of time focusing on the climate impact of more data centers, which is understandable. I happen to think over time that clean energy and renewables specifically, because they are the lowest cost of electricity in many places around the world already, will start to take over energy generation. I do clearly there is a carbon cost to AI. At the same time, I see concrete examples because we talk to the companies running them of companies using AI in very innovative ways to solve important problems. I mean, I mentioned two, this company Brainbox in buildings, this company Zoom in student transportation. We talked to a company called Wasteless, which is tackling food waste. And one of the places where there's a lot of food waste and a lot of reasons it occurs is because in supermarkets, and this is actually already in place in Carrefour in France and in Argentina.
Okay.
Uh, when when supermarkets or grocery stores get close to the expiration date of something that's fresh, like that's when they slash the price and hope and pray that someone's going to buy that product before it hits a sell by date or expires. Then they have to throw it away. What
Yeah.
Wasteless does is it builds a machine learning model that says, okay, well, what if 6 weeks before the yogurt's about to expire, what if we drop the price by, a percentage point? In the US, maybe like 2 cents, 5 cents. Does that induce someone to buy it, right? And let's test and let's test and let's test so that we are moving product, not costing the company a lot of money in terms of the percentage points to the cost of goods sold, but actually ending up saving the company lots of money because we
Yeah.
can actually push more products through and they don't go to waste. And the only way you can capture all of that data is right through machine learning models, through AI, replication, big data sets, so that you actually can get very smart about how you actually avoid food waste and make that system efficient. So I see a lot of upside. I can't tell you whether the upside outweighs the cost, but I can tell you that I see lots and lots of innovative technology companies deploying solutions at scale that are having a positive impact in terms of reducing carbon right now.
I noticed that too because I used to be very anti-AI. One of the reasons was because of the environment impact, and then I noticed a lot of these companies doing good for the environment with AI, and that was one of the thing that turned me over. And so, can you tell us a bit more about Supercool? So, what sort of What sort of content are you creating? You've got a newsletter, and I notice you also got a podcast. Do you create any other type of content?
It's primarily driven today around a weekly newsletter, a weekly podcast. Of course, we push everything to YouTube. We are going to be getting into events certainly in 2026. But yeah, that's essentially what we do. So each week we are talking to like the kinds of companies I just mentioned. We'll also talk to large corporates. Like we talked to some executives at Amazon recently. We talked to their worldwide head of carbon reduction, their worldwide head of sustainability in their operations to understand, well, what does it mean to deploy the largest fleet of electric delivery trucks? How do you do that? What does it mean as a corporation to, have the largest purchase more renewable energy than any other, private company on the planet that's actually not a developer of renewable energy? How do you operationalize that? What can we learn from? So, and then we also talk to mayors. We've had on the mayors who are really at the forefront, who are innovating in terms of getting climate finance for their cities. That's not always in the most obvious places. We've talked to the mayor of like Barranquilla, uh, Colombia, who's done some remarkable work around financing trees and showing that there's an ROI to planting trees,
Okay.
that the city makes more money the more trees you plant, which is really good to know and good to prove out. And that's the mix. We're trying to, that's the content mix. And we're trying to just distill when we have these conversations, we're trying to case study what is a company doing that is effectively enabling them to scale their climate solution? Why are their customers adopting it? What is that magic, that playbook, that insight that other business people could learn from too and apply in their own industries? And it's always interesting. It's not always the same. A lot of it often is in the framing of the solution, and we find that the companies that succeed the most when they're going out to sell their solution to their customers, the thing they talk about the least is climate change, right? The thing they talk about the least is climate impact.
Yeah.
They're very focused on solving a customer's, I know it's like real is a hard word to use, but like real problems, but actually immediate in their face business problems. Climate's the benefit. And so we unpack a lot of that in our newsletter. So it's really trying to give people insights very quickly. So in a 5 to 10 minute newsletter, you can really feel like, oh, I understand this company, I understand their industry, and I understand the playbook they're using to deploy and scale. And there's some takeaways that I can use in my life too. And if I'm in that industry, maybe I'll reach out to that company because I understand that solution is now de-risked and worth my time to consider.
Okay. Are most of these companies trying to create products that help the environment, or are they just doing something else, and they just want to do something little to sort of help the environment, to sort of impress their customers?
I think the motivations aren't always the same. We talked to a company recently called Copper that makes an induction stove, so trying to get off of natural gas.
Okay.
And the but the primary problem that they were trying to solve is the fact that if you want to move to an induction stove here in the United States, most kitchens aren't able to accommodate it because there's not enough power, right, running into the kitchen. You need a high voltage. You need to be able to plug into a higher voltage type outlet. They integrated a battery. Copper puts a battery inside the induction stove. Now that has nice features. If the power goes out, you can still cook for a little bit, but really what it's intended to do is store up enough energy in the battery so that you can still just plug your induction stove into any standard outlet in your kitchen and function and operate without having to spend thousands of dollars to rewire your house and upgrade it for electrification. So the motivation of Copper is to enable companies, homeowners, to pursue electrification, which we know is a big part of solving climate change. And at the same time, so the way they do that is by building the best cooking appliance you can possibly have in your home, because
Okay.
induction is better than natural gas, right? So the motivation is, how do we solve climate? Well, how do we solve climate by building the best possible stove anyone can possibly have, and do it at a price where it's premium, but if you're in the market for a premium stove, this works. And it also works for large apartment buildings and developers too. And so that's a motivation around climate. I'll just give you one other example though. There's a company we talked to called Butterfly, which is Buddefly.
Okay.
Butterfly goes to McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken or a Pizza Hut, a franchise owner, right? Not the corporate headquarters, and says, I'm going to make you an offer that you can't refuse. I am going to upgrade all of the equipment in your Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant. I'm going to upgrade all of your refrigeration, right? I'm going to upgrade your lighting. I'm going to upgrade everything in your kitchen. I'm going to upgrade it to the most energy efficient modern products that exist. You're going to get a way better store. And what I'm going to get as Butterfly is I am going to capture the savings in energy costs that result from you having all of this much more energy efficient equipment. You'll have a little bit of those savings. We'll take the most, but it's zero money down for you. You don't have to, all you have to do is say yes. Now, the guy who started that company wasn't necessarily initially motivated to save the planet. But as he saw what he was doing and he saw the impact on the planet, because they can cut their energy costs and their carbon by up to 40% by doing this, he's now more and more attuned and excited about what Butterfly does for climate change. But that wasn't the initial motivation. The initial motivation was, geez, this is a really good business because I can make a lot of money because who's going to say no to this?
No risk.
Today, no risk. And today he has 7,000 fast food franchises in America that are running on the Butterfly platform and growing exceptionally fast. So the motivations are different.
How are you learning about these companies? As in, do you go around looking for these innovative companies and you invite them to your podcast and you speak about them, or are they reaching out to you?
Still today. So we started Supercool a year ago. So I'm doing a ton of the outreach myself.
Okay.
And we're trying to get people who are at the top of their game. That's always challenging. I have credentials having done the Lazy Environmentalist, but even still, it doesn't matter. You're trying to get busy people to pay attention and respond to you and schedule with you. And
Yeah.
it is there. It's just persistence. I tend to find that uh, you, I never actually really give up, but I find like 4 emails is usually what it takes to get someone to respond back to me who's the CEO running a fast growing company.
Yeah.
Sometimes 5, sometimes 6. I just don't give up, and then it might take 6 months to schedule somebody,
Okay.
but persistence is really the key. As much as I think we're building a nice little reputation, we're still so early, right? I mean, we're still just so early as a company.
And you're doing it all manually, or you use AI to help you?
In terms of the sourcing, in terms of understanding what exists today, I've found it challenging to use AI because our filter for who we bring on our show is companies that are companies that are scaling, right? Companies that are scaling solutions. And that's not an easy thing to filter for with AI because, like, for example, we don't bring on a company just because they raised $200 million or they're valued at $1 billion and they're a climate unicorn. If that company isn't in market yet, if that company doesn't actually have paying customers, then to us, it's not that interesting, right? Like, I'm only interested in what's real, what exists in the world today, what's actually changing the world right now. I'm not interested in hype. And a lot of what the media covers is hype. So if I say to AI, go find what's out there, it's going to bring back a lot of noise that doesn't actually help me filter for the kinds of companies that we want to talk to.
Okay. And before we spoke, you mentioned that, before we started the call, you mentioned that you grew your newsletter to something like 10,000 subscribers in less than a year.
That's right.
How'd you do that?
No real magic there, or no real secret, I suppose I'd say. We're following the playbook of other primarily newsletter companies that have scaled audiences. So we look at the model of a company like 1440 here in the US. We look at Well, I'd say in this case, let's take an example of like 1440. And so it's really trying to optimize and get very efficient around ads on Instagram, Facebook. So using Meta, which is a tried and true practice. It's hard to optimize it. We have to keep going back and we get ads that convert and then we have to try again and try again. And we try to get that down to below a $3 customer cost per acquisition. So we've raised some money for Supercool. So we do have some money to spend on customer acquisition. We're on our newsletter is on Beehive. That's the platform that we use. Beehive itself has some pretty good tools for getting customer adoption from other newsletters. We can promote their newsletters. They can promote our newsletter. There's a lot of good crossover tools that we've leaned into to grow our audience. That's been very helpful. And then we're very active on social. That's been good as well. But I will say, since we run the podcast, it's not just our own podcast, but we also are leveraging some tools to get me as a guest on lots and lots of other podcasts where we're also able to promote our newsletter. That's been a very useful channel for us as well.
Okay, now that's good. And I think, yeah, going on podcasts will also improve your chances of showing up in LLMs now.
I didn't know that.
That will, yeah, because it's looking at your branding and your sort of presence everywhere. So, I mean, you also grew the Lazy Environmentalist to something like 100,000 subscribers, didn't you? And what worked there, for example, that you're putting into this company?
The playbook was a little different back then because back then we were creating a lot of content on lazyenvironmentalist.com and driving a lot of SEO value. We could do real long tail kind of keywords around sustainable living and lifestyle and build a really great funnel into that brand. I will say that we had success just overall in the media landscape with the Lazy Environmentalists. So having a TV show was, I mean, of course, it's incalculable how much value you get just in even if nothing else, even in terms of search, right, where people are looking up the Lazy Environmentalist and hitting our website, right, as a top of the funnel because they've heard about the TV show or hopefully watched it. I don't know how many people watched it. It wasn't like it was on, I mean, it was a primetime TV show, but Sundance Channel isn't ABC. And, we had a daily radio show. That was an opportunity. So I had different media opportunities to drive interest. But one of the things that we did effectively with the Lazy Environmentalists as well was corporate partnerships. So I was the national spokesperson for 4 years for Brita, the water pitcher company, and a campaign they had called Filter for Good, which was like, use a Brita pitcher, pair it with an Nalgene water bottle. Don't buy disposable bottled water, right? This is a way to, right, save money, stay hydrated, cut your waste. And I had the opportunity to do a lot of television appearances with Brita to talk about their campaign as the Lazy Environmentalist. And so it was really a very comprehensive kind of omni-channel way that we grew the Lazy Environmentalist brand, more so than just leaning into those hard tactics around, search SEO. But we definitely spent a lot of time on that as well to really and make sure our site was optimized. We spent a lot of time on that. We just benefited from having a pretty big funnel to draw upon to draw audience, to us. And certainly we felt early on that your best asset, even with all that, you have a TV show, you've got a radio show. What's the best asset you have? It's your list, right? It's your newsletter list. Yeah. That's ultimately what you own. You don't own your radio show. You don't own your TV show, but you own your list. So we always have placed a lot of emphasis on that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of that information. Can you let my listeners know where they can find you and also discover Supercool and Planted?
Absolutely. Supercool. Anywhere you listen to podcasts. Our website for folks who want to get on the newsletter is getsuper.cool. Try to make it easy. Planted it's like a hipster spelling, PLANTD. Materials plantedmaterials.com, so plantedmaterials.com to find more about that company. If anyone wants to reach out to me directly, the best way to do that's on LinkedIn.
Okay. Okay, that's great. I'm gonna include a link to your LinkedIn profile and Planted and Supercool, and also the direct link to the newsletter below the videos so people can find them all easily. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone who listened in.
Thank
Bye.
you so
Have a
much.
nice day. Welcome.